Hello everyone and welcome to the semifinals of the Aimchess US Rapid Knockouts. It's Vladislav Artemiev versus Alireza Firouzja, and this is already quite the game. It's a game from round 1, and although it's somewhat long, some 60 moves, everything happens really quickly and it's like it's a really short game. You'll see what I mean, so let's dive straight into it. Artemiev with the white pieces opens with c4. He goes for the English opening. We have e6 by Alireza, g3, and now we have d5, striking in the center. We have bishop to g2 and knight to f6. We have knight to f3 and now bishop to e7. So basically we transpose into Neo-Catalan. We have castles, and now b3. We have c5, grabbing more space in the center, and now a trade on d5. We have captures, and bishop to b2. Artemiev fianchettos his dark square bishop. We have knight to c6, and now d4. So this has all been played before, nothing new here. Knight to e4 by Alireza, and now d captures on c5. We have bishop captures, and now knight to c3, challenging this bishop here, but also attacking this d5 pawn twice. So knight captures on c3, bishop captures, and now d4. Alireza advances his pawn to d4, which kind of stifles white's development as you will have some problems playing e3. But this is nothing new. We have bishop back to b2 and the bishop to f5. So black develops his pieces very naturally and without much trouble. So here we have rook to c1, attacking the bishop here, and Alireza defends it with queen to d6. And now Artemiev plays a really awesome move. It's not a new one, but still a really awesome one, and that is b4. This move has nothing to do with the Evans Gambit, but I still made it a thumbnail because it's really awesome. So basically, the idea is similar. You want black to capture with the bishop or the knight, and then black will lose some control over the d4 pawn, and then you can grab this very strong d4 pawn. And it doesn't help you to ignore this. If you move the bishop, just b5 chases away the knight, and then the pawn is free. So here, after this b4 move, we have knight captures on b4. Bishop captures on b4 was played in the game that I'm referring to, but knight captures on b4 is a new move. So already now, as of move 15, we have a completely new game. Let's see how white deals with this. We have knight captures on d4, bishop captures on d4, we have queen captures on d4, queen captures on d4, and the bishop captures on d4. So everything gets traded off the board, and now, as you can see, white still has the bishop pair, and the bishop pair is fully operational. It will be well, it's not going to be easy defending those queenside pawns. And while you could capture this pawn on a2, then we're going to play rook to a1, attack the knight. You can't really go back because bishop c5 now attacks the rook and the knight. So you would have to defend it with the bishop, and now we simply capture on d7, and it's, well, just a very tough position for black to play. Rook will move, we're going to bring the other rook to b1. Now this pawn is hanging, and it's, well, it's just a very, very interesting position. So here, instead, after bishop captures on d4, Alireza says, all right, I'm going to play knight to c6. I'm going to sacrifice a pawn, but you're going to have to give up one of your bishops, and I'm going to try and fight you being down a pawn. And Artemiev accepts this. He plays bishop captures on c6, b captures, and bishop captures. And now we have this position where the material is not equal. Of course, Artemiev is up a pawn, but the bishops are of opposite colors. So if Alireza manages to trade off the rooks, then he will have excellent drawing chances. We have rook f to e8, putting pressure on the pawn here. Now just e3, defending it. We have rook e to c8 now, trying to trade off a pair of rooks, and now rook back to c1. We have bishop to d3, attacking this rook, and now rook f to e1. And now a5. Alireza starts advancing his a pawn, and g4 now. At some point, of course, you want to bring your king into the board, play h4, f4, but for the moment, just keep an eye on black's kingside pawns. We have bishop to c4 now, attacking the a2 pawn, and a3. We have bishop back to e6, attacking this pawn, and now h3, defending it, and now a4. So the pawn will be very nicely placed here. You can always defend it with bishop to b3, and black will have to keep an eye on the a3, white will have to keep an eye on the a3 pawn with his bishop. So king h2, Artemiev starts bringing the king into the game, and now Alireza trades a pair of rooks. We have rook captures, and rook to c8. Of course, he would very much enjoy trading rooks, but Artemiev knows that this would only help black draw the game, so rook to d1. We have bishop to b3, chasing that rook away, and rook to d3 now. We have f6, blocking this bishop somewhat, and now we have king to g3, further improving the position of the king. King f7, Alireza does the same, bishop to back to b6, and now king to e6. We have bishop to a5, now the bishop can also come to b4, and h5 now, trying to well, ruin white's pawn structure on the king side. We have bishop to b4, now with some ideas of maybe annoying black with some rook to d6 check ideas, but it's not a problem. Just h captures on g4, h captures, and now rook to c6, not allowing this. And here Alireza is asking Artemiev, how are you gonna get through? So first we have rook to d8. Maybe going after that g7 pawn. Also, you could deliver some checks from behind. So rook to c7, and now f4. And now, as you can see, not a lot of squares for this black king. The pawns are really doing a fine job covering all of this. The rook is cutting off the king from the d file. Bishop covers the e8 square. So basically, f7 is the only square available to the king at the moment. We have g6. Of course, you do not want to allow f5. If f5 is played, then it's going to be trouble for the black king. So g6 preventing this. And now, well, you could strike with e4 right away. Artemiev first moves the black king back. We have king to f7, and now e4. We have rook to e7, attacking the e4 pawn, and now king to f3, defending it. We have rook to c7. Alireza is waiting to see what Artemiev does. King to e3 now. We have bishop back to e6, going after the g4 pawn, but now Artemiev advances it to f5. We have g captures on f5, g captures on f5, and now bishop back to b3. And again, Alireza is asking Artemiev, how are you going to win this? And here, while you could go for a move like king to d4 right away, first we have rook to b6. Artemiev waiting to see what Alireza will do, as Alireza is down on time. I think he had around a minute on the clock, whereas Artemiev had some 3 minutes on the clock here. We have bishop to c2, and now king to d4. We have rook to d7 check, forcing the king back, and now king to e3. You can go to e5. Of course, the pawn is preventing the king, so king to c5 is possible, but then of course you blunder the pawn. So we have to go back, king e3. Now comes rook to c7, and again, how is Artemiev going to break through? He plays rook to e6 now. Now, if black isn't careful and moves the rook away from the c file, maybe we can even attack this f6 pawn. So bishop to b3, of course the rook will remain on the c file, and now rook to a6. We have bishop to c2 and bishop to d6 now. Trying to chase the rook away. We have rook to c3 with check, king to f4, and now bishop to d1. Here trying to deliver a very tricky rook to f3 check. So here we have rook to a7 check, king to g8, and now there is only one thing you can do here that could lead to a victory for white. So feel free to pause the video here and try to find this move while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting the only way out of this. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is, of course, e5. And while you could deliver a check first and then throw in a few checks, if you want to win some time on the clock, you're going to have to play e5 eventually. So e5, congratulations to everyone who found it. You are an amazing player. And now what do you do here? Well, you could capture it, but then the problem is after captures, all of these squares are covered. The rook covers f7, the bishop covers f8, and we're just going to start advancing our pawn. So instead, after e5, we have rook to c4 check, king back to e3, and now again it's the same thing. If you capture f6, now it's even worse, and the pawn is unstoppable. So here we have rook to c6 attacking the bishop here. So now if you advance the pawn, we're going to pick up the bishop, but now rook to a8 with check, and if you go to f7, then it's a problem. Then rook to f8 check, we're going to move the king, and now e captures on f6 comes with check, king h7, and bishop to e5, and that's game. We're going to play f7 and hopefully checkmate the black king, or, at the worst, we're going to promote our pawn to a queen. So after rook to a8 check, we have king to h7 by Alireza, but now comes e captures on f6, boldly sacrificing the bishop. But of course, if the bishop is captured, f7 just wins. There's no stopping the pawn. So here Alireza played bishop to b3, preventing the pawn from reaching f7, but now rook to a7 check, and also guarding the f7 square. king to g8, and now rook to g7 with check, king to h8, and now, of course, bishop to e5, and there really isn't anything else for Alireza to do here. The idea is f7, and then the bishop will be simply unstoppable. So rook to c5, black's last attempt, going after the bishop on e5, but now Artemiev ends the game in great style by playing just bishop to d4, and there is nothing more to be done here for black. So it was in this position on move 59 that Alireza Firouzja resigned the game, and the first game goes to Vladislav Artemiev. Now the reason for the resignation is you have to move the rook as it's attacked, and it doesn't matter where you move it. You could even capture a pawn, but f7 is just unstoppable. You open up this diagonal, and the black king cannot move. There's nothing you can do. If you capture the pawn, of course, we just captured the rook with check, so you can't capture back with the bishop, and if you don't do anything, well then we can deliver a check, then bring a queen into the game. Doesn't really matter. Everything wins here. We can just move our rook, deliver a check, and then pick up this rook. So absolutely everything wins here. So after bishop to d4, Firouzja resigned, and a great start for Artemiev in their first semi-final match. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, it's kind of a long game, 59 moves, but actually a really short one. Once again, I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Hayden Queenie, Aditya Parasarati, Christoph Alexander Sopa, Tom Deralo, and CakeDeFi.com for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the semifinals, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.